Some have said that the direction of your focus is the direction of your life. For the Christian, our focus is crystal clear. We are to look to Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. In every area of life, we are to lay aside the hindrances of our Christian journey and look to Christ as our example and strength to live the life He has called us to live. So today, let's starve our distraction and feed our focus on the Lord Jesus Christ. Welcome to the Walk Talks podcast and today's Friday Focus episode.
Welcome back to the Southland Walk Talks podcast, ladies edition with Emily and Emaley. We are super excited about this podcast. Today we have Tina Parry Weaver with us, and she has worked at Southland for many summers and just been super involved in the ministry there. So we're super excited to have you, Tina. Thanks for being a part.
Thanks for asking me. I'm excited.
Yes. If you could just kind of introduce yourself, give some background so our listeners know who you are and kind of what you've been up to the last couple of years.
Okay, well, I just a normal Joe Schmo little girl, but I did work at Southland. My main connection there was I was a counselor starting in 2005, which is like 20 years ago now, which cracks me up, but 2005. And then I really didn't expect to, be there all these consecutive summers, but I loved it and the opportunity was there. So I ended up being a counselor and then lead counselor for many years until 2024. And I did do partial summers the last couple, but so that just became part of my life and I loved it. And the networking of people with Southland is unreal. And people are always like, everybody, it's like Southland. It's because you meet hundreds of people every summer and that adds up. But I loved it. It shaped my life in more ways than probably my life ever shaped anyone else. Just that heart for mentoring and just being able to see just the Lord's work firsthand. And so Southland will always have a special place in my heart. But I, during the school year, some people thought I was there year round, but during the school year, I actually taught piano at Oakwood Christian School in South Carolina. And I loved it. I did a couple other things, but piano was the main thing I did. And I was there 14 years from about age 25 to 39. And then out of nowhere, God brought, in His sovereign plan, a wonderful man into my life a couple summers ago. And if you want more of that story, you can stalk my Facebook page. But we got married in May of last year, so May of 2024, and at the age of 39. So I was definitely kind of just planning out my life as a single, enjoying my little ministry life there at Oakwood and what God had for me there. And then God totally just upended everything, but I tell people it was a good upending. It was fine, but I moved to Maryland then after I got married, and so my wedding was a goodbye to 14 years of relationships there, and that was. I told people any sentimental goodbye had to be done before the wedding because I wasn't going to spend the whole day in tears, crying, and saying bye to everybody. And all the pictures look like I'm like depressed. So anyway, so that was a big transition though. It was like all at once, but it was good. And so we live near Baltimore now. And I tell people I'm barely employed and I love it. I went from having about 40 students and other things at Oakwood each week to I teach 12 virtual students now and substitute here and there at local Christian schools, teach Sunday and Wednesday classes with the kids at my church. And that's probably been a highlight. for me. And I'm brushing up on much neglected domestic skills, as I'll get to in my talk on a little blurb about singleness. But it's been awesome. And I tell people time and motivation do a wonder with cooking. I didn't have either when I was single. So now I'm enjoying that life and just all the homemaking things along with a little work stuff on the side. But it's a whole different world than it was last year.
It was really neat to just hear you kind of like talk about that and just realize like just seeing the God's sovereign plan through it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool to see how he orchestrated all those things. Today we really wanted to talk about singleness as a Christian woman and how as a single lady, how can you be involved in your local church? How can you be involved in different ministries? What are some biblical principles for singleness? And so, Tina, could we just start there and just talk about the biblical principles for singleness and what God's word has to say about singleness?
Yeah, and since I was single for all those years, I always joked with people that I felt like I got to be an authority on singleness because people would, always share books about singleness or articles about singleness. And of course, every time or single conferences and anytime a pastor like spoke on singleness, I felt like all eyes were like, looking at me. It was like, you're the token single. But I enjoyed it. Like I know some singles like they really feel that stigma or whatever, but it's just kind of a unique thing that you kind of stand out. And so anyway, but I have really thought a lot about the biblical principle for singleness because I kind of felt like that might be my whole life. So you kind of need to know your calling. But I think the first thing, and this is always one that people joke about and stuff, like it's a gift. And I read in one book that said, "Can I take it back? Like, can I regift this?" And I do get it because it's not one that I don't think many young women have a dream of, I want to get married when I'm older, or don't want to get married at all, or whatever. I think we all just naturally assume that we'll follow the same little script that most people do, and I mean that's natural because most people do, so it's average. But the Bible does say, and the classic passage, 1 Corinthians 7, that it's a gift, and so the big thing to me was, okay, who is this a gift from? Because, when you get a gift from strangers or people you barely met, like they don't mean that much to you. It's a nice gesture, but it's not like, hope chest kind of thing. But this is a gift from God. And so if you know the giver, it gives more sentimentality or more importance, I guess would be a better word, to the gift. And so I really tried to just wrap my mind around, okay, I'm getting this gift from a good God, a powerful God, a God that's capable of giving any gift he wants. And he gave me this one, and he made me, he knit me in my mother's womb. He knows exactly what I need and how I can best bring him glory. And so he gave me this gift. So it's a good one. And so not to just discard it or to downplay it, but to like feel special that he gave me this gift. And most people around me don't have it for as long as I got it. And so if you can, wrap your mind around the giver, I think it helps the gift have more significance. And 1 Corinthians 7 goes on to say why this is a gift. And it's so true. I just been married for 8 months. And so I totally see how I was uniquely equipped to do different things for the Lord that I am now. The verse 32 says that a married woman has to care for the things of the world or care for her husband. But unmarried people are undistracted and can care for the things of the Lord, can really focus on others in ministry. And even if you're not in full-time ministry, you can really give your all to people at church and to your family and to people in your community, and at a totally different level than you can when you're married, especially after children come along. My friends and I used to joke that, like, we're looking for a distraction. Like we're done being undistracted. Send a distraction. But it is a special thing to just be able to devote hours and hours to spiritual things when and not have the daily responsibilities that come with marriage and family. Another part that I felt like that made it a gift is you can uniquely show the world that Christ is enough. Obviously, when life is going great, when it's going as planned, when you're married to this wonderful man and you have children and everybody's healthy and everything's going well and you're happy and have the joy of the Lord. Like, of course, there's ups and downs, but people look at that and think, well, of course, their life is perfect, so of course they love Jesus. Kind of like Job, Satan said, well, of course he worships you, you've given him everything you could ever ask for. And so I feel like when you're single, people know that, most singles would love to be married, and that's a void that they're experiencing. And so when you have the joy of the Lord, when you are have that security and confidence in your relationship with the Lord, it really does have an impact on people that, what, I don't have to have all these other things. Like, God can be enough. And I love the verse, Psalm 73, the last couple verses. And actually the whole chapter is talking about being jealous of other people. David being jealous of, I think it was David, being jealous of the world, and they look like they're thriving. And here I am serving the Lord, and I don't, I'm suffering and whatever. And is this worth it? And then the last couple verses, he says, but who have I in heaven but thee? There's none upon earth that I desire beside thee. My flesh and my heart fails, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. And that word portion, I think of portions of food. Like, when people give you a plate of food, that's your portion. And it's like a feast that we have. God is like a feast that we can have. We don't have to feel like we're lacking, like that. He is our portion. If he's not enough, like, we have issues. And so just to have that mentality of, he is enough. And to be honest, if you don't have that mentality going into marriage and the other seasons of life, you're going to find out that, oh, these people don't satisfy me in these seasons of life either. So anyway, so those aspects of the Bible doesn't talk about singleness a ton, but Paul does talk about some stuff. And of course, Jesus was single. But those kind of things really helped me just develop a biblical view of this season that God gave me.
And that you've been a great example of these principles. I'm sure you would say you're not perfect and everything, but I think it's cool that God gave you such a wide influence, even at Southland, with your singleness, because God was able to use you and what you were going through to help so many people. And if there's anyone listening to this, if there's a single listening to this, or someone struggling even just with contentment in some area, especially singleness, I'm sure Tina would love to talk to you.
Oh, yes.
And by personal experience could really encourage you a lot. But that's so encouraging to hear, just the of singleness can even apply in every area, that what God has given us in our life right now is a gift. And that's so true. But with that, there's still struggle. So I kind of want to just get really real here and hear kind of some of the struggles. This is probably more personally for you, obviously, because you experienced this, but what are some struggles that singles have in the church, in the community, and how can those be kind of dealt with?
Yeah, I mean, every season of life has struggles. There's a quote that I heard once that said, no season of life has all the joys. Finite life is a series of trade-offs. And that really helped me, because it's easy to look ahead. I mean, this is true of any season. You're in junior high, you can't wait to get to high school. You're in high school, you can't wait to get to college. College, you can't wait to be married. You can't wait to have kids. You can't wait till they're out of the house. You can't wait to be retired. Like there's every season of life we can easily look ahead and be like, oh, if only this or whatever. So just know, and I had to tell myself this too, is that yes, there's some struggles unique to the season of singleness, but there's struggles that are unique to the season of marriage. And there's, so don't think that, I'm the only one that's, I think it can be easy in any season of life to get that woe is me mentality. Grass is always greener in every other season. So sometimes I would think through, I was like, when I saw struggles with the marriage or with the family, I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Like I'm going home to a very peaceful home by myself. And this is wonderful. So anyway, but I do think there is some unique struggles. I mean, I've talked to tons of singles in my 20 years or so. Of singleness, and because singles we kind of like commiserate or whatever together because we feel like we can understand each other, but I would say once you get past about 25 or so, especially after 30, you start feeling it. You start feeling the gap, the seasons of life between you and the college students. And a lot of churches have the college and career class, and that's fine. But once you get upper 20s, early 30s, like you just feel like you're in there with a bunch of kids. Like you do just feel like you're in a whole different season, even though you're both single. It's just different. And so I think that's what's hard sometimes with churches is there's not usually a ton of you. There's usually a handful in every church, and it's just hard to know what to do with us. And so ladies' Sunday school classes are nice because that can be a hodgepodge of all different ages and seasons of life. And we had the unique opportunity at my church. An assistant pastor's wife just really had a heart for older singles, and there were several of us, and she's actually started a Sunday school class for us. But that was unique, and that was a few years. But it was awesome, and we developed some good bonds together. But ladies' Sunday school class and can meet that need. But you're walking into church alone. You don't necessarily have someone to sit with all the time, and naturally, the church is going to be built around families. Like we can't fault it for that. And I've heard some singles like, people diss the church for that, but it's just life. Like the majority of the people in church are in families, so it is what it is. But you do feel like you're in no man's land. You're not a wife, you're not a mother, you're not a college student, and so you have to kind of like create your own belonging in this church. I found it through ministry. I didn't do music, so I was heavily involved with the choir and orchestra, and I would take turns teaching my ladies' Sunday school class, and help some with youth stuff, but I did a lot of that with school. So anyway, so I think for me, just jumping right in and finding my little niche. And then you get to know the people that you're serving with. And that's what I loved about Southland is like some of your best friends for life come from serving alongside each other. I mean, I know you guys travel on the ministry team together, and you will have a bond that, is different than most people have because you're serving together. And so I feel like that's a huge way of feeling connected to a church. It's just finding where you can contribute and like going all in. Like people that are like young marrieds with kids and barely making it, like they have a lot of distractions. So you as a single, you can like go all out. You could make some like cool looking dessert. You can make some neat craft with your kids' Sunday school class. You can, develop a lesson with a lot of substance because you have the hours to prepare for it and the hours to put into it. You could start a new program. You can, start a Bible study. You have more brain width and more time to really just devote yourselves to something in the church. And so that's what I encourage singles to do, is instead of like thinking about like what the church is not to them, to just jump in and maximize their singleness by just really going full throttle into church life. But that is a big struggle, is where do I fit in with the church? But what I challenge singles to do is you've got to be faithful to a church, though. You can't just hop around. You can't just be like a back row, come in and out and not really connect, or just watch online or whatever. Like, you need the accountability. This stage of life can be very flighty, and just you can just lack accountability. So that's a big thing, is to counteract that church awkwardness with just like jumping in. Another thing that I found to help me a lot is, loneliness can set in. That wasn't a big thing for me, but I know most people I talk to, that is the thing. Just going to a house that's quiet every night, and just not having that companionship to talk through your day, and to, just count on to be with you in every little situation that life comes. So for me, a big thing to combat that with was just having like really strong friendships and family-like relationships, like family relationships. I tried to really connect with families and their kids. Like, instead of feeling like, oh, I'm like 2 steps removed from these people. Like, not only am I not married, I don't have children, and like, what do I have in common with these people? Well, we're human, and we have a lot, especially as Christians, we got a lot in common. So anyway, so just like really pour yourself into families, the babysitting life, the actually for me, it was just like they would just like ask me over for dinner randomly or whatever. Or I would go to their kids' ball games, or events their kids did or whatever. And you just become like this adopted like aunt figure. And it's very rewarding, because everything you do, they love, and it's special. You bring them treats, you do little things with them. And anyway, so it can be a rich season of life too, of really strong friendships and like family relationships. So if you're feeling the loneliness, like, that's normal. But every season of life has its element of loneliness, I feel like. But anyway, so I would just say jump in. Church, that's where church is such a big deal, because that's where you're gonna get those family like relationships. But I always tell my single friends, maximize the perks of singleness. Like, don't think about what you don't have, in a marriage, but think about like what about singleness is cool and nice, and like maximize it. So like, I told people, like, impromptu meals are such a big perk of singleness, because I could be at school, get a text from a friend, say, hey, you want to go out for dinner tonight? Sure, we'll talk for 3 hours. And it wasn't even planned as of 24 hours ago, but now I've got a husband. I have to check with him. I have to, if you have kids, you have to get a babysitter. You have to make sure your schedule's aligned. It's like a thing. But when you're single, it's like, who knows what this day might bring? It could bring nothing special. It could be, I've closed out many a restaurant in my day with my single friends, because we could literally talk for like 3 or 4 hours. And, as long as we're not, neglecting, work responsibilities for the next day or whatever, like, we've got the time. Girls' nights, going on road trips. I had several friends that like to plan stuff, so I was never the real planner, but they would just be like, hey, you want to do something in April with blah, blah, blah? Sure. Running races with people, that's not really fun, but it can be bonding in a different way. But anyway, so just enjoy that impromptu, like, this day could be anything kind of mentality, because it's not the same when you have husband and children. I really encourage singles with, you've got more time to devote to the Bible and your own spiritual life, and Bible studies and prayer and sermons than you'll probably ever have. So like, just really delve into that, and learn to study your Bible. I had the perk of a Bible study, women's Bible study that was in my community. A friend of mine oversaw that was just so rich with all this and really taught me to study the Bible and helped me so much in my 20s to not just flail in my devotional life. And so I encourage singles, like, take advantage of that. Like, this is where you can really sink deep into your relationship with God and just establish a foundation for the rest of your life of a, good relationship with God and knowing who you are in Christ. Of course, you can, I worked at camp in the summers. You can go on missions trip. There's just so many more opportunities when you're single, and you can travel and so take advantage of that instead of sitting at home bored and lonely. Like, get out there and figure out how you can contribute to the world and specifically to the cause of Christ. Another thing that isn't for everybody, but I had several nieces and nephews, especially the older I got, the more nieces and nephews I had. So I have 8 right now. And there's this special connection that single aunts can have with nieces and nephews that married aunts don't have. They have their own kids to worry about. Or of course, if you have kids, but it's just a different dynamic. And so I could be the fun aunt that came in and did all these, messy crafts with them that their parents wouldn't touch. And I could do all these fun activities that I would never want to do on a regular basis, but I'm only home for a few times a year. So YOLO. And so, you just can have this special connection. And actually at my wedding, my nieces and nephews, several of them were crying and whatever. And I know why, because they know there's something every kid knows, that it's not going to be the same anymore.
It's changing.
Right.
Things change, especially my older nieces. They're kind of makes me tear up thinking about it, but they're like 10, and we have a special connection because they got a single aunt for 10 years. And anyway, and I could just be more flexible to see them and do stuff with them. And they were all really crying during the ceremony. It was kind of funny to look back and watch it, but not funny, but anyway, so but it was just bittersweet because it's like, yes, this is the end of an era, and that's fine. Life is made up of seasons, but there was a specialness to that season of investing in them and just having more time and flexibility for them. So anyway, so hopefully something of that might help people with the struggles that singleness naturally brings of not having someone with you for life.
A key is initiative. And this is something that I saw before I was married. Just being okay with taking initiative. Because I think a lot of times as single women, you want to be noticed and you kind of want to just wait for somebody to come to you.
Yes, don't wait.
But don't wait. Yeah, you just got to step out and try to make those connections and relationships with people around you.
You're exactly right. Yeah, don't get the woe is me. Like, you just take the first step and, make your own life for yourself.
Moving on to some of the questions. What do you feel like are some lies that single women are prone to believe, whether that's about themselves or their ministry or even just their role in the local church?
Yeah, lies. I love that book by Nancy Lee DeMoss, The Lies Women Believe, because it is so true. Like, every season, there are lies unique to that season. And a lot of them overlap from season to season, but we've covered some of these and what I've already said. But I think a big one is that we kind of feel like we're on hold, we're limited because we're single, that, we're not going to the conference, the couples retreats, and we're not able to, be involved with, helping with the marriage people and family people, whatever. But just like every season of life, don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you do bring to the table. And I think in general, singles can bring more fun because we've got more energy. We've, got more to give. That creativity, we're still in that kind of season. We have more discretionary time. I mean, I am much less busy now than I was as a single. At this season of life, no children and stuff, but you do, as a single, you have more discretionary time. You decide what you do with your time. So that's why it's discretionary. It's not that you're just like, might have free time out the wazoo, but it's just you can decide how you spend your time. And so that's huge, because you can do a lot with that. I think you naturally have a better connection with teens. Anybody unmarried, I feel like they just connect with you in a different way, because they know you're in the same boat in some way. So I taught piano, so I had a lot of connection with the teens at the school. Of course, camp, and the college students at camp, my counselors, and just other singles, even if they're not in your age bracket, like there's just a connection there. So don't think about like all the things that you can't do, but just be like, no, like I'm uniquely gifted, like we talked about before. So don't think that you're limited. You've got totally different kind of capabilities. I think it's easy to think we're unimportant, that somehow we don't bring as much to the table, kind of like what I was saying about being limited. But Paul says, like literally in that passage, he says that it's better. Like it's actually better to be single, for the cause of Christ in his mind. And so I think sometimes married people can give this vibe off. I get it. Like you're not mature, or you're not one of us, or whatever. And they might not mean to, but I've had some comments said over the years that, I could have gotten offended at. And I just try to tell myself like, they don't get it. They're just being funny, whatever. But yeah, there is something to just feeling like you're overlooked, like Emaley was saying, that you're just kind of the extra. You can also get in your head about just being insecure about your looks, about your personality, about your giftedness. You can think you're unattractive, or you're weird, or you're too loud, or you're too quiet, or Satan can just really get in your head about that. I read a book once that said you can look around at married people and know that like that's not unique to singles. Like there's weird women that are married, there's loud women that are married, there's unattractive women that are married. Like it's not unique to singles here. But it's easy to think, why am I not married? What's wrong with me? All that. And to be honest, sometimes married people will say things like, I don't know why they're single, or, whatever. And I always thought that was complimentary, but here's the thing, like, everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. Now I do think sometimes singles can be selfish and lazy and let themselves go, or just be very stagnant. And then be like, I don't know why people don't want to, date me, or, nobody's interested in me. It's like, well, like, you attract who kind of person you are. So if you have some weaknesses and some bad habits and things, selfishness that you need to work on, like do that. Don't just think like, oh, people just have to take me for who I am, and some guy's just gonna have to like deal with this or whatever. Like, no, like that's not the mentality in any season of life. And if people do speak into your life and say, hey, I would maybe consider this. And I had tons of people over the years that would say little things, take people's hints. They might not want to come out and say things, but they'll hint at different weaknesses that you might have. Like maybe you're always late, or maybe you're just have a rudeness about you, or a controlling nature about you, or an intimidating thing about you. I've had people say like, when you say that kind of stuff to men, it's kind of intimidating. It's like, oh, good to know. So, yes, improve your weaknesses, but you cannot get into this like insecure, like I must be have nothing to bring to the table. So just have a balanced perspective of who you are in Christ, but also where you need to grow. And having close relationships really helps with that, because they can speak into your life in ways that other people can. But probably the biggest lie that I feel like I just really had to battle and really hold on to, is that God is not holding out on me. Well, that's the truth. God is holding out on me is the lie. Because once you're in that funk of to have a happy life, to get what I want, I have to go outside of God's will because he's not going to give it to me if I just keep following him. That's when things get scary and dangerous. And I've seen this with single friends before. That's when you start dating unsafe people, or you start compromising in your standards, or you start entertaining marrying somebody that's not a spiritual leader. And you just start trying to forge your own frontier outside of biblical commands, and that never ends well. And so the verse that has been an anchor for me still is no good thing, Psalm 84:11, no good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. And if you just can latch onto that with all your worth, that God, if singleness or if marriage and dating was good for me, it would be happening. And if an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving God sees it not good for me, then I would be crazy to force myself into getting it, because I know it wouldn't be what's best for me. So if you can just really singles latch onto that God is not holding out on you, following him is not a minus, it's always a plus. And even if singleness is what he has for the rest of your life, I had a prayer that I wrote out actually 14 years before I dated about the type of guy I want to marry. And then the second half was, help me now as a single woman, just kind of to have that mentality, biblical mentality. And one of the phrases that I had in there was, if you want me to be single for a long time or the rest of my life, just give me the grace to fulfill that plan. And just knowing that he's not holding out on me, that he's got a plan, just was such a help to me to, come back to and remind myself of whenever. And it wasn't a continual thing for me. It was just here and there. The desire would be more so, and that void, and would feel more so. And the older I got, then it was like, well, I'm not going to be able to have children if I don't get married soon, and you start more and more things start plaguing you. And so it's just like, nope, God's got a plan, and his script is better than my script. And, I'm not just in a waiting stage. He's got a very specific plan for what this time of singleness is. And the thing with singleness is you never really know how long it's going to be. Like, I fully expect it to be the rest of my life, and then boom, this wonderful guy came into my life, and then a year later I'm in a whole different season. So maximize it while you have it, because you don't know how much longer you have. So those are just things that has helped me, and I've had to keep coming back to at different stages of singleness.
It's definitely not okay. I figured that out, and I'll move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
For me, it was definitely a daily battle sometimes, just even in my own heart and mind, just going back to truth constantly.
Yes.
And reminding myself of verses like Psalm 84:11.
Yes.
So just keeping truth in front of me
Yes.
was really, really important.
That's so
Get in the
true.
Word.
There could even be singles out there that you may not be labeled a single. You might be a freshman in college and be struggling with contentment because your friend is dating. I remember, I got married right out of college, and all the lies that you just said, at some point in my life, I struggled with. And I think that's just normal, and that's natural, and that's our flesh, and that's the devil. And you could get married a year from now and still, struggle. So I think that's such a good perspective that, the devil's lies are always the same. Our flesh is always the same. These things are, going to attack us, but the truth of God is not going to change, and who God is not going to change. And what you said, it just goes back to trust in the Lord and trusting his plan for your life. So key. So let's get really practical for, let's say you are single or you're married. Either way, what are some ways that, we as married women could reach out to singles. What are ways that they, you as a single, or what is a way that they want to be reached out to? What means a lot to them? What are some super practical things you found in your experience that worked?
Yeah, I will say, I had a lot of people investing in me. I told people that any season of life, it's good to have mentors, it's good to have peers, and it's good to have what I call pupils, people you're investing in. And so in singleness, it's good to have all three of those. And I did have several, people that tried to adopt me into their families. I would say the thing that was my love language was food. Like when you're single, like meals aren't really on the radar. Like even this morning I was thinking, okay, what am I going to make for dinner tonight or whatever. That was not usually on my mind in my singleness. It was just, what can I grab for lunch, real quick out the door, and supper. You know, and since since you could always have an impromptu thing come up, like part of me didn't want to, commit to a crock pot on the stove on Sunday morning, because what if somebody asks me at church about going out to lunch? Then
That's
I'm
funny.
like, got this crock pot thing that I got to worry about. Um, so of course I got to have people over. That'd be a novel idea. I did sometimes, but anyway, so I just think, it's not a big deal to just have one more plate of food at your house, but to prep a full meal as a single, that's just a big deal for just you. It kind of
Yes.
feels pointless. Unless you love cooking, then go for it. And I have some single friends that love cooking, so it's not like all singles hate cooking, but I just think it's a thing. I didn't have all these
Totally.
ingredients in my house at all times. I joked with people that I think my flour I had for 7 years, because I just didn't really cook much. And so you buy ingredients and then they spoil,
Right.
and then it's expensive. So
Yeah.
it's just, anyway, so I just feel like just being aware, hey, we could, text so and so and have them come over for dinner tonight. We're just having ramen and, frozen breadsticks or whatever. But if you want to come over, and I loved that. I loved, because I'm not going to ask people, to come over
Yeah.
necessarily. There was a few that I was that close to, but anyway, so it's just having them on your radar, and not thinking that you have to have. I loved just going into a home. It wasn't perfectly clean. The kids looked a hot mess. They were, what? It's just you feel part of the family when they're not rolling out the red carpet in every way. It's just I belong here. I'm just little Aunt Tina coming in for pizza. And you can leave in an hour, you could leave in 3 hours, whatever. Play with the kids. The mom loves adult conversation. They talk with their kids all day, and they're like, oh, finally an adult to talk to. So anyway, just feeding college students, feeding singles is a big deal. And just don't underestimate how fun normal family life is to a single. I didn't have little kids that, to cuddle with, or to say funny things, or to play Barbies with, or whatever, and so it might be mundane to you, but it's special for a single to interact with a family and to have those kind of things. I think a big thing for me was friends, married friends and older friends that would affirm my singleness. Like Tina, just so you know, my girls adore you, or you're making such an impact in them, or I love seeing, what you bring to the table with the church or whatever. People that just took the time to affirm that I had value and that I was not just in a waiting game, but that I was being used for the Lord. And some of them would even say, I don't know why you're single. I think you'd be a wonderful wife and mother, but this is what God has for you. And I just am thankful that you would, whatever. And just hearing someone say, you're not weird. I don't really understand why this is what God has for you. That just helped me. that they're like tracking with me, like, and I'm not some like freako, since I'm, no guy has asked me to marry them yet. And just talking about singleness, like, don't make it this like, white, I always say white elephant in the room, that you can't talk about. And I found it fun to talk about relationships and boys and, how they met and, that kind of thing. And it might depend on the person, and just like everything, every single, everybody's different on what they are comfortable with. But I just found it nice to have those close bonds with married women, and they have a different perspective since they're married of what to look for in a husband and what's important and all that kind of thing. So yeah, just invite them into your life, and it doesn't have to be formal. Like, it could just be like, come over tonight and, we're having leftovers and
I
join
found
us.
that I liked the less formal. Somehow it just
Yes.
feel more relaxed and just
like part of the family. Like you said, that's what they want.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I think we're gonna skip down to this last question because I think this one's really important. And the other ones talk about, the benefits of being single, which you've talked a lot about from your experience. So I kind of want to just ask you, like, now that you're married, what are some things that you've been able to implement, because you've had the experience already of being single? Like, how has that changed your perspective now being married?
Yeah, it is a different thing than if you get married, right out of college or, whatever. I would think. I mean, I haven't experienced both. But I think for me, like, it helps me not take it for granted. Like, it's like, this is what I've prayed for. This is special, and even on the mundane days, it's just like, this is a gift, a different gift, and I'm grateful for, helps you be more grateful for it and the ups and downs. I think another thing is you have more independence about you. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, that you're struggling to submit or whatever. Of course, that could be a unique thing because you're used to running your own life for a long time, and then you're like, okay, now somebody else is running it. But for me, it's, I'm not afraid to be alone. If he wants to do stuff, on his own or with some friends or whatever, it's not like, oh, what do I do? I'm all alone. Like, no, like, this was my life for 20 years, Tina. You like, this life. And just like learning to be content as a single, obviously has implications for learning to be content in marriage and soon in motherhood. And, you're just being able to focus on the perks of, now I can focus on the perks of being married and my marriage life, and not focus on what I don't have now that, I'm not single. And I think for me, just like, there's no FOMO. Like, I've been there, done that. I've done the singleness. I've had the impromptu meals. I've eaten out. I've gone the road trip. So now I'm not just like antsy, like, oh, what's next? Like, I need adventure. Like, it's like, no, I had the adventure. Now I'm married. So, I think there is some perks to, having that time as a single to do all those things, to advance your career, to, just be able to do that deep dive into Bible study and all that stuff. Because now you bring that all into marriage, and you're not trying to do it all at once. So it's kind of, there's definitely some perks to having had that time to settle myself and who I am and what I'm good at and what I'm not as a single, so that I'm not figuring all that out while I'm also figuring out marriage life and then soon motherhood and everything all at once.
Yeah.
And if you're listening as a married woman who is struggling with some of those aspects of singleness that we talked about, whether that's just, finding is enough and finding time in the Word, like, all those truths apply to being a married woman. So just leaning into God's Word and finding your contentment there is so important. Thank you so much, Tina, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Any last words to our single lady friends out there?
I think just enjoy the season. I have a little sign on my wall that says love your season. And I think that's just key to life, is to just love your season and find the biblical truths that support that, know God, and lean into the fact that He's the one that's chosen the season for you. So it's good.
Awesome.
Yes. Well,
Thank you.
thank you so much for joining us. This has been a blessing.
You're welcome.
We hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Friday Focus, presented by the Walk Talks podcast. Make your plans to join us next week for another set of podcast episodes that will encourage you in your walk with the Lord Jesus Christ.